Garrett tests Connor's strength again by pitting him against another electric who refuses to pay him. The man blasts Connor with electricity, but it doesn't have much effect on him. Connor brings the man down with a stronger jolt to his chest. Garrett trains him to use his powers and advises him to be more ruthless when dealing with other people in their circles. One night, Connor decides to visit Dave at the grocery and threatens him.
Hey, Papa.
Peacock is streaming and it's free. TV. Breaking news.
At home, Connor tells his mom he was accepted for a permanent job. Outside the house, Park and Davis are on a stakeout observing Connor. They learn from his records that he has no permanent work while he struggles to pay for his mom's medical bills. Park tells Davis to include him on the list of persons of interest. The following day, Connor and Garrett visit a bank to observe their routine and find out the location of the security cameras as well as the vault. Connor tells them that there's no way to open the vault without activating the alarm. Garrett says that the drone's best time is 7 minutes, so they have to be out in 5. At the grocery, Mary is puzzled by Dave's behavior because he is much nicer to her and even goes out of his way to avoid assigning her a task. That night, the gang enters the bank armed with guns. Connor heads straight to the vault to short the power, preventing the bank from locking him remotely. As the alarm sounds off, they ask him to open the vault. Garrett threatens her as she dials the combination, but Connor tries to calm her down, telling her to relax and take deep breaths. When the vault opens, Garrett becomes furious as he finds out that most of the money is gone. The employee tells them that the bank already cleared the vault earlier. The gang decides to take what's left and leave the bank. When they get outside, the drones are already waiting for them. Connor hits the drones with a surge, sending the aerial vehicles, loaded with guardians, crashing to the ground. They drive back to Sutcliffe's club and tell him that they only managed to take $50,000. As Garrett and Sutcliffe argue about paying off the trust, Copperhead approaches them and shoots Sutcliffe. Rhino blocks the projectiles with his bulletproof body, so Copperhead decides to aim the gun at me. Connor blasts the weapon out of her hand, so Copperhead comes after her with a knife. Rhino shoots her down and walks towards her to shoot her 3 more times, making sure she's dead. Later, Connor walks in on Mia as she's getting high on sight. Connor wonders why Cumbo's assassin went after her, but she tells him that it wasn't the first time someone pulled a gun on her. Mia notices Connor's injury on his arm and hates him. Mia reveals that the assassin tried to kill her because of her abilities. When Connor asks why Mia keeps healing Sutcliffe, she discloses that she's indebted to him. When Connor gets home, Mary confronts him about the money he kept in his room. He tells her that he got it from working overtime. But Mary says she called the office where Connor applied for a job, but they never heard of him. While he explains why he turned to crime to earn money, his mother suddenly loses control of her ability and collapses to the ground. At the hospital, the doctor tells Connor that the tumor is pressing her brain against the skull, and they need to operate on her right away to prevent it from getting worse. He inquires about the cost of the surgery and finds out that he can't afford it. Outside the hospital, Park and Davis wait for Connor to invite him to the police station. Park asks him about the robbery at the chemical plant and the bank, but Connor says he doesn't know anything. They warn Connor that he's working for the most vicious criminal in Lincoln City, referring to Sutcliffe. Park brags that they are about to burn up $4 million worth of site belonging to Sutcliffe next week. He surmises that it won't be long before they bring the crime book down. Park mentions Connor's hailing Connor and offers to help him if he gives them information about Sutcliffe. Davis interrupts them and starts taunting Connor by insulting his dad. Connor gets exasperated and tells them to recheck the security footage because they have the wrong person. Park tells Davis to let Connor go, arguing that they don't have enough evidence to hold him. Davis recommends planting evidence on Connor and reminds him that powered individuals can be dangerous. Park walks away, appalled at Davis' suggestion. After getting out of the station, Garrett picks Connor up on the street. Connor swears that he didn't say anything to the police and tells Garrett to take him to Sutcliffe because he has an idea for a job. When they arrive at the garage, Sutcliffe reads Connor's mind and learns that he didn't reveal anything. After hearing Connor's idea, Garrett suggests intercepting the police when they transport the $10 million worth of Sutcliffe consideration site. Connor strikes a deal with Sutcliffe, telling him to hand over the info when he gets the site. Sutcliffe figures out that Connor was using it to cure his dying mom. Mia gets upset and leaves the room. Garrett strikes a deal of his own, asking Sutcliffe to consider him a partner instead of a part of his group. Sutcliffe agrees, saying Garrett. As they plan the heist, Connor insists that no law enforcement should get killed. Connor approaches Mia and promises to let her go once she heals his mom. Mia snaps at him, telling him that she only matters to him because she's a healer. On the day of the heist, the gang repairs the roadblocks and watches out for the armored van. Drones follow the van, but they'll have to fall back once they reach the no-fly zone. Upon reaching the area, the driver sees the road, takes a detour. Maddie and Freddie follow the van in their car as Garrett walks into the garbage truck. As the driver yells at him to move his vehicle, Garrett tries to stall, allowing Connor to build up his power and blast the van. Moments after Garrett gets out of the truck, Connor finally hits the van with a powerful surge. cops soon exit the vehicle as they choke. After failing to receive any response from the van, the drone decides to enter the no-fly zone. Maddie takes the cases of psych from the guards and hands them over to Rhino. The guards beg them to let them go, but Rhino's men start shooting them. Rhino shoots Maddie in the back as she turns to see what happened to the police officers. Garrett moves Freddy out of the way with telekinesis to protect him as Rhino, and his men shoot him. Rhino takes off, leaving two of his men to deal with Garrett and his men. More Guardians arrive at the site, allowing Garrett, Freddy, and Connor to run while Rhino's thugs are distracted. One of the thugs fires at Garrett while the other engages the Guardians. The unflinching robots kill the two thugs while Garrett and his crew run to safety. As they flee, Freddy realizes a bullet hits him, so Garrett carries him to the car. Rhino arrives at Sutcliffe's bar and shows him the site. Mia asks Sutcliffe where the others are, but he ignores her question and gives her a violent sight. Sutcliffe hints that he can't let Mia leave because her father still owes him a lot of money. Upon learning that Freddy had died, Connor blames Garrett for the disastrous outcome of the heist. He argues that Sutcliffe betrayed them because of Garrett's demands. At the police station, Davis informs the police chief that Connor is one of the main suspects in the heist. Park, however, insists that Connor is just a pawn because he is not the type to kill police officers. Connor visits his mom in the hospital and promises her that he'll find a way to get treatment. Mary, however, asks him to stop what he's doing and just let her go. Meanwhile, Park visits his ex-wife's house to spend time with his daughter Lena. She tells him that other kids are afraid of her because she has been using her abilities to move objects around them. As they walk along the park, Lena expresses her fears that her parents will give her away because she heard in the news that's what happens to kids like her. As Park tries to comfort her, Travis approaches him to give him a message from Connor. Park meets with Connor at a diner to find out what he wants, but he insists that it's too late for a deal. Connor assures him that he'll turn himself in to the authorities, but he wants to help them catch Sutcliffe first. At the police station, the cops prepare to move out to ticket Sutcliffe. At the bar, Sutcliffe starts coughing erratically, so he calls Nia over to heal him. As Nia treats him, the police shut down the power and start firing at them. During the shootout, Sutcliffe escapes with Nia and Rhino through a passageway that leads to the garage. When they arrive, Garrett shoots at them, hitting Sutcliffe in the chest. Rhino tries to fire back, but Garrett uses his telekinetic powers to knock the gun out of his hand. Garrett fires multiple bullets into Rhino, but he still manages to get up and charge him. Before Rhino can reach him, Garrett uses his telekinetic ability to slow him down. Connor soon arrives to blast Rhino with electricity. Meanwhile, Sutcliffe tries to point his gun at Nia as he asks her to save him.
Want hair color that thinks it's a conditioner? Ask your stylist for a Red Kit Shaving Hair Loss service.
Rhino manages to grab Connor and slam him on the table. Connor tries to break free by electrifying Rhino, but the voltage wasn't strong enough to stop him. As Rhino strangles Connor, Garrett takes a sharp metal tool and stabs Rhino in the eye. Connor finishes him off by shooting a jolt of electricity through his head. Nia approaches Sutcliffe, but instead of healing him, she takes his gun. Garrett uses his telekinetic power to strangle Sutcliffe and take the gun away from Nia. Connor tells Nia that she'll be free to go once she heals his mom. Garrett gives Connor Sutcliffe's gun, advising him to take what he needs. Nia, however, shows him the wound on his arm as a result of decapitation. She tells Connor that she could die if she treats his mother. Despite her objection, Connor still takes Nia to the hospital. When they arrive, Nia touches Mary to heal her, but Connor soon stops her after seeing that she's struggling. When Mary wakes up, Connor approaches her and holds her hand as her life fades. Park and Davis soon find Sutcliffe's dead body at the garage. Connor arrives at the police station with Nia to turn himself over to the authorities. He tells her that the truck has a full tank to take her wherever she needs to go. Soon after the tragic heist, lawmakers have proposed an outright ban on the use of powers in Lincoln City due to the murder of 4 police officers. Park and Davis receive an award for bravery in pursuing criminals in the city. Garrett soon meets with Cumbo, paying him twice the money that Sutcliffe owed him. Connor stops by his mom's grave, saying he won't be able to visit her for a while. Nia pays a visit to her dad in prison, smiling at him as she looks forward to a new life after being freed from Sutcliffe. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel.
Bro, how?
Thank you for watching. Story recap here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama in sci-fi film. Spoilers ahead. Watch out, take care. A young couple named Will and Eva decides to subject themselves to a strict set of safety protocols after a comet released ashes that caused the spread of mysterious disease across the world. The stress brought on by the isolation and preventive measures has not been easy for the couple. To top it off, draconian mandates from the government have left them no choice but to hide, not just from the authorities, but also from their neighbors. On day 400 of the pandemic, Eva uses a test kit to find out if she is infected. But while they are waiting for the results, they hear the authorities knocking at the door, so Eva runs to her room and hides in a compartment under the bed. When Will answers the door, military personnel immediately enter their apartment to inspect the rooms. The sergeant looks at Will's ID and points out that he isn't mentioned in the apartment's lease records. Will tells them that the place belonged to his girlfriend, Carolyn Hartley, but she had already died from the virus. The sergeant takes another look at his records and asks Will about Eva Bowser, who is also listed on the lease. Will tells them that Eva went back to England to visit her parents when the pandemic hit, and he never heard from her again. As the sergeant looks around the apartment, he interrogates Will about all the plastic covering the furniture. Will tells them that it was part of the quarantine measures to keep his girlfriend safe, but it didn't work because she still succumbed to the disease. When the man inquires about the test kit, Will explains that he tested himself because he could be carrying the virus unknowingly. One of the soldiers calls the attention of the sergeant after finding a room with numerous pictures of women on the wall. Most of them hold papers with dates on them, but others have written names directly on their skin. Will discloses that these were women that he once knew. The sergeant finally tells his men to move out of the apartment after finding nothing suspicious inside. On the way out, the sergeant tells Will that he's impressed that they managed to survive the pandemic for so long. He assures Will there's no cause for worry because he has no intention of taking the infected individual living with him. When Will asks him what he meant, the sergeant points to the vial of the test kit on the kitchen table. The sergeant hints that he knows what the government does with the people they take with them. Before leaving the apartment, he tells Will to enjoy the last few moments.
Born in Roma, Fragrances by Valentino.
PayPal and Venmo touch-free payments, now accepted at CVS stores nationwide. Get a $10 reward when you make a touch-free payment of $20 plus. Open the app and ensure your QR code.
While Will broods over the result of the test, Eva tells him to start packing so they could leave. While they drive on the streets, an emergency announcement notifies the area's residents that a curfew is in effect. The announcer tells the residents to avoid exposure to the ash and report any sighting of females to the authorities. They stop by a store to buy some groceries, but Will tells Eva to stay close to him and keep quiet before getting out. Inside the store, most of the shelves are almost empty save for the feminine hygiene section, where the products are offered free of charge. While Eva inspects a tampon, a store employee grabs her bonnet from behind, exposing her long hair. Will hears the commotion, so he points a gun at the startled employee, telling him to lie on the ground. After being convinced that no one else is in the store, Will leaves the man $40 to pay for the groceries and tells him to stay down until he finishes counting down from 500. Several weeks before the disease emerged, Eva had asked Will if they could go on a trip. Eva says she wants to go to a waterfall because she hasn't been to one in years. After breakfast, Eva and Will start reminiscing about their last road trip, but their serene moment is suddenly interrupted by a bird hitting their window. When they look outside, they notice the ashes falling from the sky. As they continue to stare outside the window, their roommate Carolyn enters the apartment and collapses on the floor. Back on the road, Will and Eva stop by the hotel to stay the night. In the morning, Eva tapes a girdle around her chest to conceal the breast. She notices some dust on the edge of the sink and rubs it on her cheeks to give her a stroke. She smiles as she continues applying the dust to her face. Later on, Will and Eva stop by a diner for food, but Will is worried that it might be too risky for both of them to go inside. However, Eva hints that she doesn't want to meet her last meal on the road. Inside the diner, Will orders the food as Eva refrains from speaking to anyone. While they wait for their meal, a news anchor reveals that the Embryo Project was able to grow a fetus inside an artificial womb up to the second trimester. The authorities look at the promising experiment as a possible way to repopulate the Earth once they find a cure for the virus known as HNV-21. As other men arrive at the diner, the news reveals that the reward for reporting a living woman to the authorities has been increased from $1 million to $2 million. Will and Eva start to feel uneasy as the other men discuss the reward. When the waiter approaches their table, Will orders 2 pie slices to go and asks for the check. While preparing to leave, Will notices blood dripping from Eva's food. Will tries to wipe off the blood from Eva's face, but he knocks over a coffee mug, calling other people's attention. Will and Eva try to avoid the gaze of other customers as they rush out of the restaurant without paying for their food. When the waiter tries to come after them, a man offers to pay their bill as he watches them drive away. The man, named Arthur, tells his stepson, Casey, to finish his meal and prepare to leave. Will and Eva soon arrive at the entrance to a forest leading to a waterfall. Will tries to convey his concerns about Eva's health, but she urges him to enjoy their trip. In the past, when Will and Eva took Caroline to the hospital, Will noticed that the nurses and doctors seemed to be on edge. As more people arrived, he realized that all the patients were women. Will tells Eva that they'll have to leave, but Eva insists on staying behind to find out what's wrong with Caroline. Will only manages to convince her to leave when he tells her that only women are getting sick. On their way out of the hospital, Will decides to stop by a restricted area to grab 2 hazmat suits. When they get home, Eva receives a call from her dad, Peter, who advises them to quarantine. Peter gives them instructions on how to disinfect their apartment. First, Will covers the doors and furniture with plastic. applied bleach on the floor and sprayed disinfectant in Eva. Back in the present, while taking a break from their journey to the waterfall, Will sees Eva taking photos, so he asks her why she's still doing it when no one can see the images. Eva suggests that other women might still be out there, noting that she's not that special. In another flashback, on the second day of the ashfall, Will had incorporated the quarantine protocols into their morning routine. Will says they need to start boiling the water because the virus has entered the water supply. Will had installed UV lights all over the apartment because they can kill pathogens and germs within 2 feet. They will be eating canned food for a while, but Will assures Eva that the quarantine will be over soon. When Eva hears her phone buzzing, Will advises her not to take it out of the bag when she answers the call. On the news, they hear that thousands of women have died from HIV-21 and millions more are infected. At least a dozen males have been found with the virus, but none have exhibited any symptoms. By day 44, Eva has started to become weary from eating ravioli all the time. The couple tries to keep themselves physically close by caressing each other while wearing gloves. As the days go by, Will builds a compartment that they can place under the bed so Eva can hide in case of emergencies. By that time, the government has begun to hold women in captivity. The news shows that the women appear to be happy as the president pays them a visit, but articles on the internet claim that the government has been conducting horrific experiments on women. Since Eva is not allowed to go out, she settles for taking pictures by the way. Will, however, warns her that it's still not safe, so he asks her to give him the camera. Eva is slowly becoming more irritable during her isolation, as she feels constricted by the photographs and the smell of the Lysol all over the house. While browsing the internet, Eva comes across a chat room for women who manage to avoid getting infected. The group called She Will Survive has 131 participants when she joined. Meanwhile, Will is becoming more protective of Eva as more women die from the disease. As Eva searches for her phone, Will tells her that he has hidden it for fear that she might be sending critical information to strangers. Eva is shocked to learn that Will went through the phone without her knowledge. Eva confesses to the women in the SWS chat room that she's starting to feel helpless because of the quarantine protocols. On the other hand, Will is often displeased with Eva every time she fails to follow the preventive measures. Soon, they hear from the news that 10 million women have already died from HIV-21. The number of participants in the SWS chat room has been reduced to 89, with some members noticing that fewer people are logging on each day. Eva tells the women in the chat room not to lose hope because other survivors are still probably out there. She then points out that her mother is still safe in England. Will and Eva continue to argue about the quarantine rules as the disease continues to wreak havoc worldwide. Meanwhile, the number of participants in the SWS chat room has continued to dwindle. When Eva goes online, she finds that there are only 14 women in the group. Back in the forest, Will and Eva practice shooting a can after setting up camp. Will misses the target, so he asks Eva to try it. Eva hits the can on her first shot, so Will asks her to try again. Meanwhile, Arthur and Casey have found Will's car at the forest entrance, and Arthur punctures a tire on Will's vehicle before going after him. After shooting, Eva and Will relax in the tent and get intimate, but their lovemaking is soon cut off and Eva's body starts to tremble. On day 238 of the pandemic, Will decides to hunt a gun. When he entered the store, the clerk told him that he's a little late because most of his merchandise has already been sold. The man offers Will a rifle and suggests that it will be suitable for hunting women because it's not lethal. Will says he only wants something he can use for self-defense. Will gets home carrying a handgun with him as he disinfects himself before entering the living room. Will also brings home a test kit and tells Eva that he wants to use it to find out if he's a carrier. Will says that he is also tired of the quarantine, and he is hoping that he'd be able to touch Eva again if he's cleared. He rubs the swab into his mouth.